It kind of goes back to taking every thought captive. And,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that as someone who has struggled with flying by the seat of my pants my entire life, one of the things that I've worked really hard on is slowing down and being intentional. And I've also lived most of my life in survival mode. So I've been on that hamster wheel. That's probably why I was flying by the seat of my pants. And it felt like I was thriving, but really I definitely was not. And so now, as I've been able to slow down and recognize, like, I need to be intentional. And that is with our thoughts as well. And so, taking our thoughts captive, first of all, we have to recognize what thoughts we have and then ask God to help us flip the script. And I think the cool thing about like the body image timeline for me is like looking at these could very well be areas where there's some brokenness. And so many times those are areas where we don't want to go because it's not comfortable. Most of us have spent our entire life avoiding it or, keeping it buried under the surface. But when we can address it and acknowledge it and take it to God and process through that, that is where the true healing comes. And so I think this process that you're talking about is so powerful in so many areas to work through, not just for changing your thoughts, but also like I recently there's something that I heard a long time ago, and it's like shackled people can't free slaves.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of us who want to change the world and we want to impact the world in a positive way. And we're like trying to do this work, but we still have work that we need to do as well. And it's easy for us who I think a lot of my audience, like we struggle with rejection and these insecurities and this orphan spirit, which I'm just kind of starting to learn about. I didn't even know that was a thing, but I know that it is a thing. But we want to focus on everyone else because they are worthy of it. And in that, like we can only do so much, and God needs us to pay attention to ourselves so that we can be truly free, so that we can do that work, but also like He wants us free, right?
Yeah.
Like, like we are not supposed to continue in this bondage, which is what these insecurities, all of these struggles that you talk about in your book.
Yeah.
So do you have any thoughts on that?
On which piece?
Any of it? Like what comes up for you?
Yeah. The thing that came up for me is just the being willing to do the work, not only for ourselves, but for everybody else that we influence, so maybe you are a biological mom and you have kids, but all of us are, even if you're not a mom, all of us are influencing somebody. And it takes at least one person standing up and saying, hey, I'm willing to make this a priority, right? Be purposeful about it. Say, hey, I'm not okay with the way things have been, and I don't want to see them keep going this way. So it starts right with us. It always starts with us. I have moms who will come to me and say, how do I help my daughter? And I start talking to them about them first, because I'm like, okay, let me see where you are, right? It's so often we want to help other people get help, but we're not being willing to go, oh, maybe I also need help. Even if it's not body image for some people, like you said, we all have a story. We all have trauma in our lives. People get a little squeamish to talk about it. And a lot of people think, oh, I don't have trauma, but you probably do. And the good news is the Lord is a gentleman. He will, if he brings something up, it's because it's on the way out. It's because he's saying, hey, I would love to deal with, to heal it. Reveal it and heal it, and so we can trust the process. We can trust that it's, nice and slow and steady. And for anybody that this brings up some hesitation to go into their body image timeline, I do. And, I mentioned this a couple times in my book, especially if you've got some big traumas in your life, like sexual abuse or, just some big things. It is going to be very important for you to go do this with the help of a professional, because it will be a battle to even feel safe enough, right? Our body goes into all the different responses when we don't feel safe. And so you got to feel safe first to even feel like you can kind of start looking at some of these things, because the last thing I want anybody to do is like dredge up all this stuff and then be like overwhelmed with it. That's not what we want. And so if you're listening and you're like, that feels so scary, then okay, then go do it with somebody. Don't do it alone.